So this big title slide of design thinking is where we'll start from, and this will crop up a number of methods and strategies for interviewing people, synthesizing insights, building rough and rapid prototypes, and testing and iterating on solutions and thinking as an enabler. And what I want to do is, as a second aim of the presentation, is to knowledge transfer from a series of global projects and that management team, you listening to this presentation, to come up with new solutions, innovations in terms of how to do things. So this is broadly the partnership, a partnership of municipality, of coffee producers, of the university, Universitas Tidar, and of course to bring wealth and sustainability to the neighbourhoods that produce the coffee. At the moment is looking towards focus groups and training to start developing e-commerce platforms. But what I wanted to do was to put in as a method design thinking of a way of enabling that solution. Typically, you'll see in terms of the issues in management and marketing column that the management and artisans have only been trained so far in production processes and do not yet possess management and digital marketing skills. So what I'm looking at is design thinking as a method to enable that new thinking. So a circular process developed at Stanford University in the United States, and I would always start with the yellow segment, the circle that you can see at the moment. So to empathize with the community of concern, of interest, so those artisans, that management team, and work with them to then define what the issues are, prototype phrase, and to come up with potential solutions, the prototypes, and then to test them. However, even when you get your successful test product, it's to keep thinking about the way in which that e-commerce product could become better. So you continue that process of empathizing and looking to make a difference. So what does this mean in a little bit more detail if I move my little segment around? And it means put the user first. So the big emphasis is on the needs of the people. To think, yeah, absolutely, this is about e-commerce, this is about the opportunities and possibilities of technologies, economics, about economic change, but it's also about creativity. Ivano-Frankivsk in Ukraine, in the west of Ukraine, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about design thinking before we get into the method of how to. So design thinking for me is a systemic initiative. It's intuitive, it's customer focused, it's about problem solving, it's about responding to rapidly changing environments and to create maximum impact. And those rapidly changing environments can mean that design thinking is an antidote to a world that can be characterized as volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, hyper-connected. VUCA has become the acronym for that. So what do I mean by design thinking is systemic, though not systematic? So what I will do is give you a range of tools by which you can deep dive into the system of the organization's way of doing. So what we're trying to do is, through the design thinking methodology, create a little bit of creative tension, maybe even a little bit of uncertainty by using planning techniques which go back to Voltaire in 1767. We're talking about doubt being an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one. So what we're trying to avoid is someone at the start of the focus group saying, there's only one way in which we can develop this e-commerce platform. For Stanford, design thinking is for product managers, it's for marketing professionals, it's for entrepreneurs, it's for chief executives, business leaders, process specialists. So design thinking for me includes a lot of play, and it involves a lot of play on the basis that play enriches work, it builds team connections and trust, it unlocks creativity, it opens up new perspectives, and it also builds energy as well. Me to say again that play is typically the activity, the instrument or the tool. Playfulness is the attitude, the practice, the your mind, if you like. So it's how you respond to the activity, the instrument and the tool, and that should create playfulness about being open to new experiences, imaginations, and the ability to explore possibilities. So if we apply playful to learning, what I've been doing over the last almost 10 years, and actually once I started thinking about it over my career over 26 years, is to start thinking about building a toolkit where it can be digital, it can be analog in terms of face-to-face. Sometimes we'll use cards to get a group to think about a different way of looking at the world. So way through the woods in terms of their career, maybe you need to be an adapter to get the e-commerce platform off the ground and to be working functionally and successfully. Maybe there are times at the start of the project you feel yourself clinging to the edge. So we use those metaphor cards as stimulants, and then in terms of strategic planning, I typically use Lego. So if you want to read more on this, there are open source publications. And I think if you want a analogy for this, think of Plato's allegory of the cave. Prisoners are chained, unable to turn their heads. They see only shadows on the wall. To them, these shadows represent reality. But when a prisoner escapes and experiences the world beyond the cave, he or she is momentarily blinded by the sunlight. Go serious play or any Lego session where people sometimes often arrive with clear perspectives. Shadows cast by their assumptions and certainty. You have the bricks on the table. You're not entirely clear what you need to do other than instinctively, and with the support of the facilitator, you start building. So on and so forth. And with every Lego brick, one steps further into the light that would have remained hidden in the shadows, like in Plato's cave, rather than the lean back meeting where people are not participating actively. Typically do is that you will build something which is then discussed, and research has shown that this can be really powerful in terms of insightful and honest discussions. That the creative reflective process of making something prompts the brain to work in a different way and can unlock new perspectives. And giving us the opportunity to build something before anyone has discussed anything gives us the opportunity to put our own issues on the table, both literally and metaphorically. It allows you to think with the body because you're building. So psychology, neuroscience evidence emphasizes that cognitive processes such as learning and memory are strongly influenced by the way we use our bodies to interact with the physical world. What we have is a visual reminder. It allows us to put issues on the table, and then through the reduction of workload of having put those issues on the table, it allows us to move on to the next task. And I can still remember this picture here. So picture here, model here, picture here. Everyone builds, everyone discusses. This gives more vocal or less gives more junior or less vocal members of a team the chance to have their say. And it offers the senior or the dominant personality the opportunity to listen. You are all involved in the process of creating this e-commerce platform. What we're giving you is the tools to think about that creatively. And for that reason, if you look at the open source material around Lego Serious Play, sometimes as much as I enjoy the process of Lego, I'm less convinced about the process of Lego Serious Play, which will take you through a series of quite rigorous stages, and you have to complete stage 1 before you move to stage 2. I provide in terms of putting the e-commerce platform into place. And what do I need to surround me with in terms of resources to make that? Development of your theory of change of what the e-commerce platform is meant to do. And then typically I'd use something like Business Model Canvas or a gamified version of it to talk about what the organization should look like behind the e-commerce platform. And Business Model Canvas is pretty standard now, starting in the middle with the value proposition. What makes you different? What are you offering? What customer relationship do you want through that e-commerce platform? Is it going to be transactional, or do you want to identify a real link with your customer? Are you going to give reward points where actually I feel I'm part of the process, or maybe I could pass my reward points on to a good cause? Who are going to be the customer segments? Yellow blocks to identify what the revenue streams are, and then we move to the costs, if you like. So these are the costs, these are the key partners, the key activities. Thinking about the way in which Business Model Canvas works. So the way in which your value proposition.
Environmental information that you'd already had. And what we're doing in this round is giving you some information from a different perspective, additional information. And what we've done is we've monetized the environmental impact. So now you'll see what the economic impact of a particular hectare land use looks like. So the land use for agriculture in option 1, import, is $0.2 million. The land used by farms with grasslands before with relatively low biodiversity, so this cost is actually quite low. In contrast, if you source locally, the cost jumps. Remember that to source locally we're going to use almost twice as much land hectares. But actually the value of that land, its cost, is $3 million. This was land used by forest, got a relatively higher biodiversity value, and it's very important within the context of Mexico. Therefore, the value jumps. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, then the global effects of those emissions are pretty steady between option 1 and option 2. They go from the same value base, which is their global impact. And this is $1.2 million if you import. If you source locally, option 2, remember the greenhouse gas emissions are a quarter of what they were for if you import. And therefore, because our value base, the global effects of emissions, is the same between option 1 and option 2, the cost is just $0.3 million. In terms of water use in agriculture, you may remember that if you imported, twice as much water was used, 2 million cubic meters of water. Sourcing locally,
part of the uncertainty of the process, people wondering how they're going to be able to cope, express their ideas, mainly through drawing. Yes, as you see from this picture, a little bit of scope to write some words, and these talking about experiencia and sensorial and authentica and significant. My Portuguese got worse over the years. So experience, sense, authentic, significant. So what you want is at the start of the process for the e-commerce platform development is to draw the big opportunity for you. And the best pictures are ones that express emotions really powerfully, as this one does. So the emotions are the roots of the food in the ground, in the experience of Recife is as a slave city, and the food having that experience of quite poor food, but food that the slave communities energized with flavors, with spices, making the most of the food that they had and creating a legacy of food that's handed down now as a gastronomic experience. In fact, you're always looking towards completing in around about